Our next speaker is Doug Baltz. He's from the National Science Foundation, Birmingham Public Schools, and Oakland. Doug Baltz has been an AP Physics and STEM teacher for over 20 years at Seaholm High School in Birmingham, Michigan. He served his Albert Einstein Fellowship at the National Science Foundation, Education and Human Resources Directorate, Division of Undergraduate Education. He is also a past Pasco STEM Educator of the Year, current Michigan STEM Partnership Executive Board Member, and an adjunct instructor at Oakland University. Doug has also presented at numerous national science conferences and more. Let's give a warm welcome to Doug.
Thank you. Thank you. That's a tough act to follow, isn't it? I was going to ask, what do you add to powdered water? You can figure that out. When Einstein was an active professor, the story has it that one of his students came up to him during class and said, "Professor, this year's exam questions are the same as last year's." Einstein calmly replied, "True, the questions are the same, but this year, the answers will be different." How profound. Same questions, different answers. Yet, how dumbfounding for the student. I'm glad I didn't have to take that exam. Einstein embraced and encouraged a culture of questioning questions. He dug deeper to analyze the structures of inquiry, not to be satisfied with the answer as the end result, but using the answer as a foundation for asking more questions. He mixed in a little when and how, maybe a pinch of what and where. He stirred in a little bit of who, and don't forget that special inquiry ingredient, why. Einstein wanted to pursue, and he did, building blocks of knowledge. But more importantly, he created foundations that were blueprints of questioning. He understood that in order to engage all citizens of science, he really needed a blueprint of questions. But he also understood that that answer to the same question may be different over time. We, as architects of STEM engagement, encounter the same question all the time. It may not receive the same answer, but our blueprints will change. We constantly have this gap discussion going on. In fact, Don was talking about the knowing and doing gap, which I think is widening even greater than the other two, which is academic and skills gap. How, as architects of STEM engagement, can we bridge these gaps? We have the same question, we have many different answers with minimal effective blueprints. I think it really lies in this opportunity gap. We really need to look at the opportunities that are intentionally given to our students throughout their education. If we don't, the opportunity to do what they apply, meaning it's not really what you know, it's what you can do with what you know. Our engagement efforts become mute. But maybe, just maybe, it's not the question that's wrong. It's the blueprint that is giving us problems. Maybe the blueprint isn't flexible enough to engage or at least change the stakeholders' needs that we need over time. We as architects need to go back to our blueprints and adjust accordingly, because the same questions may have different answers over time, and or they may be challenged over time, just as they are in Washington, D.C. Well, maybe some of our blueprints could parallel the original blueprints of our nation's capital. The architect Pierre Lafont was an ingenious engineer. He, in fact, had blueprints that were immaculate and had great foresight. Architects of the Capitol actually embedded rules and laws to protect the design of that blueprint, and justifiably so. But there was one law that was found within that blueprint, and that law forbidded all people to sled on Capitol Hill since 1876. Every time they asked the question, can we sled, they received the same answer, no. Check again next year. There were numerous challenges to the sledding ban. When I was in DC, the challenge was reaching a tipping point in the wake of an epic blizzard of up to about 4 feet of snow. Capitol Hill families decided that they were going to sled in open defiance of this sledding ban. In fact, they called it the Great Sled Uprising. And believe me, it caught the attention of our congressional leaders. The congressional leaders had to go back to the blueprint, and they changed the blueprint because it was challenged. And we began to sled on Capitol Hill. In fact, there was We the People Need to Sled was a great celebration. In fact, I saw people using all types of materials. They were using, laundry baskets, baking sheets. I think I even saw a few people using Vote for Bernie signs to get down the hill. 3D learning, I think, is, and I firmly believe it is, the opportunity gap solution. Right now, it represents a funnel. That's because we have baseline data that has given us maybe a few successes, maybe a few shortcomings, but it truly is a pipeline. It is a conduit that allows our students to navigate through these gaps, and the talent flow through it will be freely to the workforce environment. The blueprint of success involves architects that incorporate 3D learning with many different answers to the same question. They're actually shedding light into new lamps. My journey as an Einstein Fellow, I got to see many different lights, many different STEM programs. There was NGSS buy-in approaches. They had curriculum development that was, these PDs would last for 8 days sometimes, and they would just develop. I would see flexible dialogue spaces for discourse. They were looking at best strategies and best practices for 3D learning. It was very impressive. However, I just want to give you a snapshot because there's a lot of, again, answers to the same question. But one trend that I found prominent throughout the country was a research education model. Research education models provide research experiences for teachers, and more importantly, what I saw, they're offering it to students. The research education model, as Holly, our previous speaker, had talked about her experience, was the RET solicitation by the National Science Foundation, which supports teachers in engineering and computer science research. The goal of RET is to allow teachers to translate their research experience back into the classroom. In fact, the Iowa STEM Council took a hybrid approach of the RET program. They called it an externship. They offered 3 to 4 weeks of experience in a research environment for their teachers, and they're starting to see some benchmarks being met. Let's see, there's the Michigan STEM Partnership, there's the Michigan STEM Council, there's Change the Equation, there's the Math and Science Networks. We are all bridge connectors that bring education and business and industry and other STEM coalitions together to promote other research experiences. However, these are all about teachers. Some of the most impressive programs, in fact, that I saw was in Salt Lake City, Utah. It was called InnovaBio and STEM Factured, and they immerse students and teachers in the same research program at the same time. Wow, it was pretty incredible. They could articulate in their blueprint the relationship between research, theory, and 3D learning and the workforce needs that are required for the biotechnology industry that's in Salt Lake City. These are architects that create little tiny steps, just like the Sled revolt in DC. That was tiny in scope, but it had a larger impact. And my point being is that we as STEM leaders, as education leaders, we need to help our architects. We need to help them develop different answers to different questions. Value our architects, value their blueprints. Now, there will be some architects like Sheldon, they'll be stuck in his ways, okay? There will be architects that will be very progressive. There will be architects that I know you're gonna have to coddle and push along the continuum. But in order for us to be successful leaders, it is imperative that we support them because it is all about 3D learning and its evolution, okay? Well, as architects, we should be able to build different and innovative foundations that support 3D learning. And that's important. Those are our efforts. It changes the way we think sometimes. But I do want to remind all of us that no matter what we do with NGSS and three-dimensional learning and all the great buzzwords that are out there, as educators, what we really need to do is develop many strategies that engage all minds. That's STEAM. Be reassured, the blueprints will be different. We will question the questions, but in the long run, it is about the success of all our students. I'm reminded on the eve of the inauguration of Albert Einstein again. Einstein said, "True, the questions may be the same, but the blueprint to the answer may be different." And I'm hopeful that architects of all backgrounds, their voices will be heard so we can shed new light into old lamps. Thank you.